Thank you for watching this short video. My name is Brother Sean, and I'm a member of the Teo community of St. Francis, an interfaith Franciscan community who at present are a cyber community where we gather together online and connect through our live stream virtual TV channels, Doves for Peace and Franciscan Soulmates for Peace. This short video is a reflection on what is spiritual transparency in the spiritual life. But first, I would like to read to you the entry prayer into your castle, your soul, from the amazing book, Entering the Castle, An Inner Path to God and Your Soul, by St. Teresa of Avila. I cross the bridge into the silent bliss of my castle. I close the drawbridge and forbid all outsiders, influences from entry into this holy place that is my soul. Here in my castle I am alone with God. Under God's light and companionship, I discovered the depths and the beauty of my soul. I embrace the power of prayer. I open myself to divine guidance. I surrender myself to become as a channel for grace, healing and service as God directs my life. This is a beautiful prayer, and it is the prayer that we should say every day. It's a prayer that for me is about embracing the language of love. For when God calls you a child of God, a beloved, there are no impositions set on us, no hard fast rules and regulations like being a citizen of the world. You are invited by the Creator God to surrender your heart so that you can receive the abundance of God. And every child of God, regardless of their belief, their color, their creed, their sexual orientation, lifestyle choice, disability, whatever, each child is a valued, respected, and a beloved child. And though all are invited to surrender their heart, interestingly, very few do. And those who do have to work against a tide of many struggles, often from the Antichrist or negativity. For many of us have come into this incarnation which is a dense negativity. It's third dimensional energy. And many of us are at this moment in time fighting many, many forces, but not alone. We are using a weapon, and it's the weapon of God's love. And the way we can keep attuned to that love is through listening in periods of silence. What is spiritual transparency? Well, we've talked about governments and politicians being transparent so that those who pay their wage from their income tax know exactly what they're doing with their money. Well, for me, spiritual transparency means that if we are a child of God and we accept that, then we should have no fear in our heart. We should not be ashamed or embarrassed if someone asks you, what belief do you have? I know in Northern Ireland, when I was a young nursing monk back in the late 60s, one had to be discerning because both Catholic and non-Catholic incurred the wrath of fundamentalism. And this is happening now in parts of the Middle East, especially in Syria, between the Sunni and Shiite Muslim. So what is that saying? We must not be afraid to stand up for what we believe in. I was brought up a Catholic Christian. I was more a cradle Catholic. I went along with the tide, but there was always fear and guilt. I never felt good enough. It was ingrained within me that I was a sinner, evil. Even in the monastery, as a young nursing monk in my 16, when I entered at 16, we were indoctrinated with this fear of God. And because I didn't have a particularly good relationship with my father, or he with me, as his eldest son, I was always trying to win my father's affection by trying to do good things for him. But he wasn't really a good parent. He meant well. He was so more preoccupied about his ego and good looks, and he was a stunningly good-looking man. In fact, he was the double of Errol Flynn, if you know who Errol Flynn is, the American actor, and he had a beautiful voice like Mario Lanza. But he was a womanizer. Sorry, Dad, he's in spirit now, but I love him. But that childhood experience between father and son and his father, obviously had a knock-on effect as a young monk, because I looked upon God like I looked upon my own father, in fear. But in later life, having had a major breakdown, it became my breakthrough, where I experienced a different slant to God. And having come back to my heart after many years of living away from my heart, because I allowed fear, yes, I allowed fear domineer my life. Even as a nurse and a nurse manager, we were always made to feel we were never good enough. So if you're made to feel not good enough, then you don't perform your best, do you? Of course you don't. And I certainly didn't. But today, I believe that the cosmic Christ, now that we've come into the Aquarian age, is asking us to be transparent, is inviting us to be eco-spiritual warriors like Francis of Assisi, our spiritual patron, the founder of our community, who guided us in 2006 to embrace all faiths, but in 2008 to establish the Teo community as an interfaith Franciscan community where men and women of different faiths could live the monastic life from their own home. And all that's asked of us is to surrender so that we can receive the abundance of God, and to be transparent. In other words, to let others see the light of God, not listen to our dogmatic theological responses, but to allow others see that light, so that that light of God in our heart will draw them to that light. But sadly, we find in religion today, in all religions, the major religions of the world, there's a lack of spiritual transparency. You find that human nature has gotten the better of many religious leaders, imams, rabbis, priests, clerics, nuns, monks, holy men and women. Yes, some fall by the wayside because they're doing a trapeze act. They're trying to balance their spiritual life with their egoic life and what people think of them, and trying to please too many people, running a gauntlet instead of staying centered in their power, God's power, and allowing the light of God's love touch them, empower them to self-heal, and just be I know some of my friends and family and neighbours must think I'm a totally crackpot, a totally gone with the wind sort of character. But you know what? You have to be cracked to live in this world. Because the more cracks you have, the more light you can let in. I don't profess to be anything other than me. Yes, my name has been tarnished on the internet by a member of my family because as Catholics they see me that I've rejected my faith. Little do they know, I've not rejected my faith. I've simplified it and I've moved away from the dogma, the hypocrisy and the lack of spiritual transparency. And now what you see is what you get. I don't profess to be a saint. I am a human being who struggles each day with mental illness, with bipolar and chronic pain from many years of heavy lifting. But that doesn't get me down. That's a prayer. I ask God for grace and strength and I'm given it. What gets me down and saddened when I see members of our community who come and who've gone, who lost their spiritual transparency when they became deluded by their own ego and selfish desires. But isn't that happening everywhere? It's not just happened in our community, it's happening in the church, it's happening in politics, it's happened with the bankers, where the lack of transparency covered a multitude of sins, and then when transparency was demanded, it uncovered a web of deceit that hid every child of God. And many are suffering today as a result of that deception. If you are on the spiritual path, I'm not here to tell you what to do, nor am I here to tell you how to live your life. But I would share this with you. Honor your heart. Your heart is your teacher. Your heart is the gateway to your higher self. And your higher self is the gateway to your God. And you will find in that loving relationship with your beloved the need for spiritual transparency and not to be afraid of others, of what they can say or do to you. For God's power is mighty. It's mightier than the sword or an unleashed tongue. It's so easy today to blame others, and I guess that's where the nanny culture comes from. It's prevented a lot of people from taking back their power and speaking their truth. I hope that what I've shared with you resonates, and all I ask in exchange, will you please pray for me? Namaste.